Fridays Live with your host, Rose, today. I'm coming to you from, sunny Southwark, actually. It's been raining all day, so do let us know where you're tuning in from. Say hello. We've got the wonderful Ellie in the comments today, so do also say hello to Ellie too. So we've got a very exciting and a different Fridays Live for you today. But before I get onto that, I'm going to give you a quick reminder of our question of the week, which is, who is your most travelled ancestor? Who is your most travelled ancestor? So have a think about that, and we'll come back to that shortly. Just seeing who's joining us. We've got Flo over on YouTube. Hi, Flo. We've got Ellen from Illinois. Hello, Daphne there from a muggy Somerset. It is muggy today. It is. I just don't know what to wear at the moment. I went very summery for the rain earlier, but I've been vindicated. The sun is out. The sun is shining. Hopefully we'll have a lovely, lovely weekend. More joining. Hi, Kim. Hi, Matthew. Hi, Karen. Great to see you all today. It's lovely to have you. I said we've got a quite special Facebook Live today. And our new records this week, they're all from the county of Wiltshire, and they have been provided to us by our wonderful friends at the Wiltshire Family History Society. And we have a really special treat here today, because we actually have David and Jenny from the Wiltshire History Society going to tell us all about these records. So I will let them introduce themselves with something that I prepared earlier, Blue Peter moment. So let's hope this all goes without a hitch. Okay, so without further ado, it's over to David and Jenny. So as promised, we have a very special treat for you today. We have David and Jenny here from the Wiltshire Family History Society, here to talk about the wonderful new record sets that they have provided us with for this week. So Jenny, I'm going to hand over to you. Would you like to tell us a little bit about what you do with the Family History Society?
Yes, sure. My title within the group, within the society, is I'm the transcriptions coordinator. So basically that means we have a team of transcribers who work at the Wiltshire archives, and I try and liaise with the different people who are heading different projects that we currently run, and then also liaise with David, who you see on the screen, in terms of getting this material published and out to our members and to other readers as well, to provide more material, obviously, for family historians researching their Wiltshire ancestors.
And David, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself and your work with the Family History Society.
I'm one of the unfortunate people like Jenny, that when you have a volunteer, you never say, oh, I could do that. You let that person get on with it. And so for a good number of years now, I have been taking what Jenny's volunteers have been doing and converting those transcriptions into printed and downloadable documents, PDFs, that we make available through our society. And more recently, I've really become aware of the value of getting these resources up onto Findmypast. It really is another platform that gets even further than just people looking at our publications leaflet. So yeah, it's quite a challenge. And some of the things we're going to talk about, they are things that they're data sets that have been around for a while. And I suddenly realized that, hang on, will it need a lot of work to get these ready for Findmypast? And the other thing that Jenny and I are doing is, when we have a new data set or new project, that we work together to try and ensure that when the transcribers set out their work, it's in a format that not only we can publish, but also we can easily provide to.
So lovely to have Jenny and David with us today. So there are 4 record sets that they're going to talk us through, and I'll go through these with you now. So first off, we've got Wiltshire First World War hospital records. We also have the Wiltshire Asylum registers, Wiltshire baptisms, and Wiltshire Tithe Award registers. And although Wiltshire figures very strongly here, as we'll find out, these records do span a wider area. We get to see there's some records from the southern England as well, as we will find out. So let's just dive into our first record set of the week, which David is going to talk us through. And these are the Wiltshire First World War hospital records. It's just so fascinating to know the work that sort of goes on behind the scenes up until that point, till the records come onto our site. It's really great to get that insight into the processes that go on behind the scenes. It's wonderful. So we've got 4 sets that you have brought us from the Wiltshire Family History Society. First of all, I'd like to discuss the First World War hospital records. David, could you tell us a little bit more about them?
Sure. A good friend of mine a number of years ago had transcribed records from 3 hospitals in the Salisbury area, a Red Cross hospital, an isolation hospital, and the Salisbury Infirmary, which during the war, and for Salisbury Infirmary right up until the 1930s, accepted service personnel. Now, by service personnel, right, it started off with military, then Air Force, and also civilians working for the military. And the records, I mean, what he transcribed to me were fantastic. It was fantastic because you have service numbers, you have the length in service, you have the link, why they were admitted to hospital, where they're from, the unit they're from, and we have a good number of people on there from the Anzac forces, Australia, New Zealand, and South Africa. It was just begging to be published. So yeah, that's up there. There's not, I think there's about 6,000 records, but the point is that for an awful lot of soldiers, you might only find their medal card or something like that, because their actual service record might not have been kept. And so these could be unique records. And as Jenny would agree, all of the work we do is based on original records held at the Chippenham, the Wiltshire Archives in Chippenham. So everything that we've published and people see there, they can go to Chippenham and they can see the original.
Well, that's wonderful. It sounds like a really fascinating collection, and just that chance to maybe discover a unique record. Absolutely wonderful. They will hear a bit more from Jenny and from David later, but I've been seeing a few answers come in for our question of the week. So just to recap, our question of the week is, who is your most travelled ancestor? And I think we've got some very well-travelled ancestors today. So just looking through some of these answers, we'll start with Jane. Jane, her grandfather spent 26 years at sea from 1885, went to Brazil, Mexico, New Orleans, Montreal, Calcutta, Cape Town, Durban, and the West Indies. That's incredible. And I think, you know, for many of us, our ancestors will have travelled because of their service. I know my dad travelled a lot. He was in the army in the 1960s, and he went to all sorts of places, Borneo, Sri Lanka. He doesn't have a passport now. His travelling's over. It's great to hear. Thanks for sharing, Jane. Who else have we got? Sally. This one popped out to me. My most travelled ancestor, I think, would have to be my great uncle. He lived in Portsmouth, moved to Brighton, then to Oxford, fought in the Boer War in South Africa. So again, another military ancestor. I think that was part of the recruitment, wasn't it? Sort of join up, see the world. And then he was back in Oxford, travelled by ship to Australia, where he cycled around the perimeter. And this was all around 1900, so travel would have been tricky. Well, incredibly tricky. And cycling around Australia, that's absolutely incredible. Wow, that's an achievement. My goodness. Roxanne here, she says her great-grandparents are probably the most travelled. Pictures of them on multiple cruises, international vacations and business trips. Yeah, so I think I was considering this question, and I think it might be my grandparents, and they travelled a lot to the States, and I think it was quite, they would have been the first one in the family to do that from the 1950s onwards. And my mum has a wonderful anecdote of actually them traveling through Europe, through Austria in 1959, and that was when the scars of war were still quite obvious, and they were actually quite pioneering. So yeah, grandparents sitting up there. Janet is another great uncle, born in Hertfordshire in 1837, joined the army, went to India, discharged from the army, came back to the UK, became a policeman in London, and joined the embassy legation escort in China, where he died in a gun accident in 1874. Oh my goodness. I was not expecting that when I picked that one. Amazing. Thanks for sharing that, Janet. What a story. Nicole, we've got some great ones. I think we've got some very well-travelled ancestors, certainly. Most travelled ancestor 3 times and 2 times great-grandfather, travelled around the UK as part of being travelling showman. 3rd times great-grandfather came from Prussia, Germany. Oh, wow. That's amazing. Wonderful story. Thank you for sharing, Nicole. Looking for some more. Karen, most travelled ancestors probably me or my father. I like that one. Let us know where you've been, all your adventures. Okay. And Anne, my grandfather was a merchant sailor at sea and in the First World War. Oh gosh, so that was a very dangerous role to undertake at that time. All that travelling as well. Wonderful. Thanks everybody for sharing. Keep this coming through. I've got Andy here. My 3rd great uncle was born in Great Sankey, UK, lived in Widnes, moved to Australia and then to the USA. So some big changes there. I only have one ancestor who emigrated themselves. They emigrated from Yorkshire to Canada, and my grandfather then came back as a soldier in the Second World War. Then he went back to Canada again. So I think that's maybe one of my most travelled ancestors. Okay, I think we're going to go back and hear again from Jenny and from David. And next up, they're going to be talking about the fascinating Wiltshire asylum records. So these are the records that actually cover a bit beyond Wiltshire, as David will explain, and actually cover the south of England as well. Our second record set of the week is the Wiltshire Asylum Registers. And David, could you talk us through those as well, please?
Yeah, Jenny will get a chance in a minute.
Sorry, Jenny, we're not ignoring you.
I'll leave you with the lunatics.
The asylum records were transcribed by the same friend as mine, and he started this way back when he discovered that a tailor had set fire to a hayrick in the mid-1800s, and he had been committed to as a criminal, a lunatic asylum as a criminal patient. He started off in Fisherton Asylum in Salisbury, and this is part of the records. He was then, when Broadmoor opened up, he was sent to Broadmoor, and actually they eventually realised that there's not a lot wrong with him. And he was then sent to the Wiltshire Asylum near Devizes, where he eventually died. But this particular case caused my friend to start going through the admission registers, the discharge registers, and the case notes for the people who had been admitted to the Wiltshire Asylum, Fisherton in Salisbury, and 3 other private asylums. And what we have published, admission dates, discharge dates, whether they were paupers, criminal patients or whatever. It's just it's a bit like an iceberg. It is the tip of an iceberg. You almost need to go to Chippenham and see the case notes, because for the paupers, you would have no other records of these people. And here you have physical descriptions, what their problems were, their weight, all sorts of things. And in fact, in later years, you actually had photographs of them. You know, head and shoulders photograph, which you sometimes think, well, this is only with criminals, but no, this is people in asylums. And they were, and the thing we mustn't forget is they had issues, they had problems, and the asylums really were trying to help them. So to me, yes, this is a fantastic resource, that it's a real pleasure to get it out there.
Yeah, a very vital, important collection by the sounds of things. So yeah, thank you for bringing this to us, and I'm sure our subscribers will enjoy looking through these records. And finally, before we move on to Jenny, just we've got some Wiltshire baptisms this week, David. Could you tell us a little bit more about those?
Yes. One of our members has been for about 30 years now converting our baptism transcripts into a format that's suitable for Findmypast. And the 60,000 that we've just we've just provided, they are the final batch of all those records, and they bring us up to date. I think we've submitted at the moment just over 1.5 million baptisms and burial records to Findmypast. And the important thing, I think, that the work this member has done is fantastic, because when we publish a baptism record, you'll have baptism son of John and Jane, and that's it. But of course, with Findmypast, people searching there, the father is important. You need to know who that is. You need to know who the mother is. And so and also when you have an alias, you need another record. When you have an alternate spelling of a surname, you need another record, because on paper it's obvious, but when you're searching in Findmypast, it's not, and that has created a lot of work. And the one other thing I would say, sorry, I just remembered about the asylums, is that the patients come from all over the south of England. You've had patients coming from Cane Hill, from all, you know, so somewhat people from London, from the West Country. So it is so worthwhile checking the records, and don't just think, oh, that person's in a Wiltshire asylum. They could have come from wherever to get there. But anyway, there you go. That's the asylums, yes, and the baptism records.
Thank you, David. And that's a really good tip for everybody watching. It's not just Wiltshire here that we're talking about; it could be wider. So, yeah, that's great. So we had a few more answers to the question of the week coming through. We've got Karen saying that her granddad fought in World War I, was shipped to France, Belgium and Cairo before being demobilised. And yeah, I was just thinking, you know, that contrast between how our ancestors used to travel. So either it was with the military or the Navy, or it was something very permanent and lasting, emigrating to Australia, South Africa. Whereas for us, you know, we have our little trips around the world. So the way that we travel has changed, and it's just fascinating to sort of understand those differences. More answers, wonderful. Thank you everyone for contributing. So we've got Anya here. Her 2 times great grandfather was born in Mount Ash in Glamorgan, moved to Ashton in Macclesfield as a miner, ended up in the newspapers writing back from Borneo, where he was working as a gold miner. Oh wow. And going to another gold mine in Ghana. Wow. And children being born all over the world. That is what a fascinating man he must have been, all the things that he's seen during his lifetime. And then Matthew's joining us from YouTube. 4 times great grandfather was born in Dorset but died in Kent, went via Hampshire. Again, moving to Northampton. Born in Northamptonshire, married in London, ended up in Kent as well. So yeah, most of my ancestors sort of followed a similar thing. They weren't moving far. Generally, London was involved. Okay, great. So we're going to hear about the final record set of our new record set of the week now, and that is the Wiltshire Tithe Award Register. So Jenny explains this to us, and it's actually a really fascinating record set, really helpful for house history. So let's hear from Jenny now. Jenny, the Tithe Award Registers. Now I'm intrigued by these. What are they?
The tithe, well, it was a work done as the result of some legislation passed in 1836 called the I can't remember the official title, but it was the Tithe Commutation Act. Tithes were a tax laid on every farmer, every producer, of a tenth of the value of their crops, their harvest, their animals, which was originally intended to pay for the provision of churches in the locality. And by the 19th century, there was a mixture of tithes still paid in kind, so you paid part of your crop over, or some of them had been changed to monetary payments to represent that value. So there's this great mixture. And there was this act passed which said we would change it all to payment of money rather than this mixture of goods. So the Tithe Commutation Act arranged for commissioners to go to every parish and to work out the size of land holding or the size of crop, and to set a value on how it was paid, and a formula was set out for that. So what you have is a surveyor who goes to every place, well, most places, there is a variant on that, and establishes who owns what, who occupies what land or properties, and then a description of that land. So you have a list, in fact, for the areas of the landowners, the land occupiers, a description of fields, their size, what amount of land it is, what it is, whether it's woodland, arable land, pasture land, etc. And it includes some houses as well. So you got this amazing record of who owned the property, who lived there, and wonderful descriptions of areas in every town and village. I say every, where this was done by agreement, that wasn't covered, that was fine, that had already been agreed. But for the other areas, it was the amount, the establishment of what the land was, what the property was, and then this was agreed overall, and the tithe commissioners in London accepted this. So you had a description, which is what we worked for, and a map as well. And then the tithe commissioners agreed it, sealed it, and it was set and agreed. And we have worked from the copies that were held by each bishopric, which were then, in our case, the bishopric of Salisbury, which were deposited in the Wiltshire and Swindon History Centre, which is where we work. And they are fantastic records. It took us, we had a team of 8 transcribers working on this, and it took us over 4 years because we followed the normal way we work in the archives. Someone transcribes it, someone else checks what they've done, just to make doubly sure that we've got it right. And then eventually we got round to publishing it. But yeah, so again, anyone can go and look at this record in the archives in Chippenham. They can look at the map as well. There's the written description and also the map that accompanies it. It's fascinating material. You can find your own house or the area where your house is, and you can trace their the history of what's happened to that land holding. It's really great.
Such a wonderful set, and just to know that work that went into it, 4 years, 8 different people, it's wonderful. And I know a lot of us watching today are really interested in house history. I've done a lot where I grew up, so this sounds like it'll be a really valuable set.
One little word of warning: sometimes the tithe record does show the names of the individuals in small cottages. Other times it just gives a name and then says this disappointing phrase, sundry occupiers.
Yeah, really interesting set there. I can't wait to have a look. I think I do have some Wiltshire ancestors somewhere on my family tree. Now, I'm going to have a look now today at family tree profiles on the site and how they can be a really fantastic tool for bringing your research to life. What you see here, it's very small, is a branch of my family tree. So this is not my direct line. At the top there, you've got Abraham Small, who is my 4 times great-grandfather. And this is a different line stemming from him and his son, who has a wonderful name, Henry Zapnath Panir Small. I don't know why. I don't know where that came from. It's a wonderful name. So I'm going to go down this branch of the tree to look at his great-grandson, who was named Austin Major Small. Now, to access your tree profiles, you're going to click on the little tree node there. And a summary of the life facts will then appear on the left-hand side of the page. And then I'm going to select View Full Profile, which I have circled there. Okay, so this will take you to your ancestor or relatives profile page. And you can see at the top, there is a summary of when and where Austin was born. He was born in Luton in 1894, and when and where he died. And so that was in Fulham in 1929. And Austin was also an author, so you can see that information summarised at the top. More on Austin's writing career later. But there's a few things on the profile page that I'd like to highlight that can really help you with your research. And they are, from this page, you can search for birth, marriage and death records, and these will come up pre-populated for you. There are also highlighted things to, hints for your ancestor, further things to investigate. And finally, my favourite thing about the profile page is the kinship calculator, which allows you to work out how you are related to someone. And that's especially useful when you're dealing with someone who's a bit more distant, it's more of a remote relative. So that actually helps you to work out how you are exactly related to someone. So you see here, it's all smooshed together a bit, apologies. What happens when I click through to those various items. So we see his Austin Major Small's birth record comes up, and this is pre-populated with information that's already found in his tree profile. And then you can also view his hints, and I can see there is a hint to his census record and his birth records. I think the census there is hidden. It was 100% match showing up in Luton in 1901. So definitely our Austin Major Small. And then finally, for me, my favourite bit, and I can see some love for that here. Ellie's very keen on this tool as well. The kinship calculator. So how am I related to Austin Major Small? Well, he is my second cousin 3 times removed. So that is very good to know. And our common ancestor is Abraham Small. Great. So on the profile page, you have the ability to add facts and events in, and this is just really useful for keeping track. I don't know about you. I before this, I just have notebooks everywhere, scroll down with loads of information everywhere. So this is just a really good way of collating your research, having it in a central place where you can go back to and take a look at that. So facts and events, you can add in all sorts of facts and events, from your basics, your birth, your marriages, to nicknames, to details of a will. And this in this particular instance, this was really useful for my research into Austin Small, because he went by a few different names. So he went by Austin James Small, and he also went by his pen name, C Mark. So this was really useful. When I revisited this page, I was doing some more research into Austin Major, and I was drawing a blank. I was like, I know he was in the Navy. We have Navy records. Why isn't he coming up? And I had completely forgotten that he changed his middle name. He went by a different middle name, and that enabled me to then bring up his naval record. So you see, he's Austin James Small here, and this is from the British Royal Navy Seaman collection, and it charts his service from 1813 all the way through to 1820, with all the different ships that he served on as Austin James Small. And I just love these Navy records. You also see them with the merchant Navy records. You get the description, how tall he is, 5'10", auburn hair, grey eyes, fresh complexion, and also his character, very good. I also noticed, because I was quite jealous the other week when I was talking to you on Facebook Live, how a lot of you had travelling, performing ancestors, and Austin notes himself as a kitchen porter and a music hall artiste. So it was gratified to see that. And, it's always just a reminder just to scour an image for information, just to wring it dry of all the information you possibly can, because there is so much there to be discovered. Anyway, back to profiles. And the final aspect of profiles that I wanted to touch upon this week is the media aspect. So just along from where you can add facts and events, you can also add media. So photographs of your ancestors related to a person, or it could be newspaper reports, that type of thing. And you can see some of the examples here that I've added for Austin Small. There are some newspaper headlines, there are some photographs. And you can also add a profile picture of your ancestors. So that's what shows up on your tree. And you can do that by just selecting set a profile picture there at the bottom when you are uploading your media. And you can also add a descriptive information as well, which is really useful, again, for sort of organising, collating your research. So this particular striking photograph, I love the pose. I love the pose. It's sort of, you can imagine him sat in a photographer's studio somewhere with that particular pose. And this appeared in the Illustrated London News of Austin in 1929. So yeah, here's some of the flavour of the media that I've added for Austin Small. You can see at the top left-hand corner the picture of his marriage to Kathleen, or Katie Stride, in 1924. Now, this photograph was featured in the Daily Mirror, and you might be wondering why. We get some great photos of in regional press of marriages, but not often turning up in the Daily Mirror. So I mentioned before that Austin was an author, and I found this out from our newspaper collection. So he wrote novels, mainly sci-fi novels, in the 1920s, and stories for newspapers like this one, which is called The Mystery of the Black Triangle. And he also wrote sort of columns as well in the national press and plays. So he was relatively famous in the 1920s, and I was actually lucky enough to be able to buy a copy of one of his books. He's not remembered now, but he was pretty famous then, and you can see a picture there of one of his books, and that's somewhere on my shelves, of one of his books, Master Vorst, under his pen name of C Mark. And I've not read it yet. It's quite delicate. It's published, printed in 1951. And I don't actually know whether it's any good or not. That the jury is out on that one. But at the time, his books were made into films in the early 1930s. There is a really pioneering genre of science fiction. But sadly, this story of Austen Major Small didn't really have a very happy ending. We've got another picture here from the Daily Mirror. This is C. Mark there on the left-hand side, C. Mark's letter to his wife. And sadly, this was his last letter to his wife, aged only 35, and despite enormous success in his professional life, Austen took his own life after his wife, Katie, had left for Nice on holiday for her health. And even though the newspapers might paint this story of a successful author and success in his professional life, Austen had a really tough life personally, and and finding that out by delving around his family members and researching them, giving that context to his life and why, what might have led him to such a drastic act. His mother died young. His father owned a straw hat factory in Luton. He went bankrupt in 1909 when Austen was in his teens, just around the time he might have joined the Navy. His younger brothers were sent to Canada as Bernardo's children, and they stayed in Canada. And his eldest brother was killed in action in the final month of the war. So Austen had a difficult life. He was a cook on a ship, so he didn't have that sort of social status, but in the 1920s, he did manage to elevate himself. He got fame, and who knows, he might have gone on to more success. Sadly not, but I think it just reminds me certainly about that importance of context, looking at an ancestor or relative's lives in the context of those lives lived around them, his brothers, his father, how that would have contributed to his life and to his struggles. So Austen Major Small, my most famous ancestor that I've found so far. Okay, so we do have one final word to hear from the lovely Jenny and David from the Wiltshire Family History Society. They're going to give us a little insight into what they've got coming up. So yeah, I'll hand back over to them. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I know, Jenny, you've got some exciting projects with your volunteers. Did you want to just quickly go over those for us?
Yes, sure. We've been lucky that we've been working. Obviously, we closed down while there were closures because of COVID, but some of our volunteers are back in the archives and working away. One long-term project that I'm deeply involved with is on the manorial court records. So we go back to the 17th century, dip into the 16th century occasionally, and this is looking at what's happening in the manor courts. So this is a source of quite early names for records. So you could say it is alongside the parish records as well. And that's testing some of us on our knowledge of Latin, because we're working through that. A bit slow because it's quite difficult to do. We'd also have a project. We are undertaking some work on overseers' accounts, but that is coming along slowly. And we're hoping to do some more work on nonconformist records. But two projects which we just started with the archives who'd like us to do it is on jurors' lists. So this is property owners from 1707 who were eligible to be called for jurors for the quarter sessions. So that's a lovely long list of names, some occupations as well. And also the depositions made on cases at the quarter sessions from the 1828. So this is witness statements of what happened and who was accused and where it took place. So again, the family historians, a lovely series of names that are coming available. And we will, in time, as we've got sufficient together, we will be publishing them. So I'm talking to David about the right sort of format that we can use to try and make sure we can get these available for people just as soon as we can.
Oh, that sounds so fascinating. I really do. And it sounds like you're very busy as well. A lot going on. But thank you so much, both of you, David and Jenny from the Wiltshire Family History Society, for joining us. And maybe when those new records come out, you'll be joining us again to talk about them. Thank you very much.
Okay,
You're welcome.
Yeah, we're certainly very excited to have those new records sometime in the future. Don't know when, but it's nice to know and have a little glimpse of what's coming along in the future. And again, big thank you to Jenny and to David from the Wiltshire Family History Society. So they joined us by the magic of the pre-record. I spoke to them yesterday. There's a little confusion over whether I was making quick outfit changes in between videos. It was recorded yesterday, so coming from the magic of the pre-record. And so from Wiltshire Family History Society now, and to the Police Gazette. So I noticed on a couple of times that I've spoken on Friday's live review how many criminal ancestors we have. So this drew me to highlight the Police Gazette to you all this week. So before we get to what the Police Gazette is, I just wanted to show you how to find it on the site. So we have the Police Gazette for 1921, which you can browse. You can get to that by going to the wonderful All Record Sets button, and you just search for Police Gazette. It also forms part of our wonderful crime, prisons and punishment collection. So if you head to that by the same method from All Record Sets, and you can search the Police Gazette in this collection by entering the words Police Gazette into the keyword search, or by searching series MEPO 6. So what is the Police Gazette? It's got very historic origins. It was first published in 1772 as the Quarterly Pursuit. So the reason why this was published was that it advertised wanted criminals so that police authorities could then catch them. And it was first issued by Chief Magistrate of Bow Street Police Court, who was Sir John Fielding. Now, John Fielding had quite a famous relative. He was the younger half-brother of novelist Henry Fielding, who wrote Tom Jones. So two very different claims to fame there with the Fielding brothers. So from the Quarterly Pursuit, it was also known as the Hue and the Cry before it was changed to the Police Gazette. And it was published under the auspices of the Home Office until 1883, when control went to the Metropolitan Police. So that's the reason behind the archive reference of it being MEPO or MEPO. So what sort of things can you find in the Police Gazette? Again, so you've got the apprehension sought for wanted thieves, receivers of stolen goods, escaped offenders, and this formed the part of the main weekly publication. And there were various supplements to the Police Gazette. For example, you had Supplement A, which looked at active travelling criminals. More on that later. And Supplement D, for example, looked at deserters from HM Armed Forces. So you can see some examples here on the left-hand side. You've got absentees from the militia as well as deserters from the Royal Marines. And what is so fantastic about the Police Gazette is the level of detail that you can garner from it. You've got names of offenders, deserters. You've got the year of birth, but you've also got what they look like. So the hair and the eye colour, like we talked with the naval record earlier. It even goes even further than that. Talks about marks. So one of the Royal Marine deserters, Ernest Budd, he has a scar over his eye. It also lists tattoos. So William Henry Jones, another Royal Marine deserter here, he has an anchor heart and cross on his left forearm and a soldier and a woman on his wrist. So these identifying marks would then help the authorities then identify and bring these people into custody. So what happens when you search the Police Gazette? So this is the transcript that you will be presented with. And the transcript shows the name of the offender, their age, birth year, the court session year. And we'll also give their different aliases as recorded in the Police Gazette. So it does look rather alarming when you see at the top there Christopher or George Stabler or Elliot or Staveley in 1911, but this is all the different aliases for Christopher Stabler. He could be George Eliot, he could be Christopher Staveley, maybe even Christopher Elliot. So this can be a really useful tool for tracking those elusive criminal ancestors. They're changing their names, and here you have all of their different aliases put together. And so this chap certainly had a lot of different aliases going on. So delving into the pages of the Police Gazette now. And this particular section shows a list of warrants issued across the United Kingdom. And you just get these wonderful descriptions in the text of the wanted person. For example, we've got George Thomas Parr on the far right, wanted in Bath for stealing from his lodgings a silver watch. And he's 21. He's 5 feet 4 1/4. So I make that he's 1/4 of an inch taller than me. I'm very proud of Mike being 5 foot 4 inches and 1/4. Always forget the quarter. He's got a sallow complexion, light brown hair. He's clean shaven. He's got grey eyes. He's got a blue scar in the centre of his chest. And again, he's got lots of tattoos. My favourite level of detail, which might be too much information here, I fear it might be, is that he has a boil scar on his left buttock. We also know what clothes he was wearing. He tends to wear a black coat and vest, light trousers, straw hat, and brown boots. So I don't know, just imagine if George Parr was your relation. This level of detail is absolutely incredible. You could paint a picture of him. If you are artistically inclined, you could draw him. It's wonderful stuff here. But the Police Gazette goes one better than these descriptions. Photographs. And you can actually see pictures of your criminal ancestors, relatives in the pages of the Police Gazette. So we've got some examples on the left here of portraits of persons wanted, and this is from 1901. So the man on the left-hand side, in the rather, I think it's quite Western-looking hat, he is Henry White, but also known as, again, aliases everywhere, Henry Cranfield or W.H. Newton. And he was 38, a draper by trade and a native of Southwark, so not too far away from me. I'm based in Southwark. And he was believed to have gone to the provinces after he was sentenced to 6 years in prison for horse stealing and larceny. And next to him is Arthur James Embry, and he was wanted in Radnorshire for housebreaking and stealing a gold watch, binoculars and a checkbook. And he was just 23. And my favourite thing about Arthur is the clothes that he was wearing. He was supposed to be wearing a lavender cloth coat. I think he sounds rather dashing, does our Arthur. And on the right-hand side, we've got a portrait of a person in custody. So this is a mugshot from 1911. And this is John Joseph Philip Cannon, aka George Smith. He was 45, a labourer and from Glasgow. And he was charged with stealing money from an offertory box in a Roman Catholic chapel in Liverpool. So yeah, classic mugshot there. And even before the days of photographs and before photography was widespread and could be reproduced in printed press, the Police Gazette included drawings, such as this one from 1886 of wanted man John Peacock Williams. And he was sought in Yorkshire for forging a promissory note to the value of £180. And it's noted in the Police Gazette how he did this with intent to defraud the National Provincial Bank of England. Very serious. But again, the level of detail, it surprises me every time. So Peacock was 27. He had rather wavy brown hair. And I think you can sort of see that in the drawing of him. And he has a very slight moustache and thin, flat feet. Goes on to describe how he turns his toes in and bends his knees outward when walking and stoops slightly. So not only do we know what he looks like, what he's wearing, we know how he walks, which I just think it's just so fascinating. And our John Peacock here, he's a bank clerk. And we've got another wonderful mugshot on the right-hand side, and this is from 1919. This is taken from Supplement A, which I mentioned earlier. And Supplement A depicted a range of travelling and active criminals. And this particular active and travelling criminal was Martha Shaw. Now, Martha Shaw had her aliases, of course, bit of a theme. She was also known as Patty Shaw or Martha Withers, and she was born in Bristol in 1893. So in this picture, she's in her mid-20s. So Supplement A, this was encouraging the police to look out for those who were likely to undertake criminal behaviour. They weren't wanted per se, but they were known to be criminals. So it was more of a sort of a preventative measure to sort of stop the crimes that Martha and others might undertake. And for this end, again, we have the very detailed descriptions. She's 5'4.5" again. She has brown hair and blue eyes. And listed in this section is her personal weaknesses and her peculiarities. Such an interesting turn of phrase there, her personal weaknesses. She walks with a quick step. She's got a confident style of speech. She's well-spoken. She's very plausible, but untruthful. Sometimes she dresses as a nurse in a small bonnet and a long hood. Now, she'd been convicted in Oxford in 1918 as part of her criminal record for housebreaking, and she was in prison for 12 months, and she'd just been released, hence her appearance in the Police Gazette supplement. And she had previous convictions for larceny, fraud, housebreaking again in Bristol, York and Reading. So yeah, although she had been released, she was back on the streets. So her inclusion here is really to be on the lookout for Martha. What might she do? And to help this, we get her method, her modus operandi, her MO. What did she do? How did she go about committing her crimes? Well, Police Gazette tells us. During afternoons, she visited quiet working class neighbourhoods, knocked at the doors, receiving no answers, open same. If unlocked, she walked in, stole wearing apparel, clothes, jewellery, etc. from various rooms and packed the property into any available bag or basket. Or she would obtain a position as a servant, parlourmaid, and commit various larcenies from there, stealing from her lodgings. And she would dispose the property to wardrobe dealers, in some cases through the medium of Ida Constance Rand, who was imprisoned with her. She was convicted with Ida Rand. And finally, the Police Gazette notes that this is a good likeness, this portrait of her. And there's something, I found this very compelling about this portrait. I feel like Martha's been through a lot. There's something very tantalizing about this picture. I'd love to know more about her. And finally, I looked her up in the newspapers because I hadn't mentioned newspapers once, and that's so unlike me. Oh no, I did mention the Daily Mirror earlier. I did. I have to mention the newspapers. And I found her in the Reading Mercury from October 1918. So this is when she was convicted. Having a fairly common name like Martha Shaw, pop that in, and then you can restrict your search by a particular month. I knew she was convicted at that time. You can even limit it geographically to encompass Oxford or Reading. And it says it's a quiet day at the assizes, and Martha and Ida, both servants, were sentenced to 12 months hard labour each for entering a house in Stratford Street and stealing property to the value of £25. The property of Edward Kelly. So we've got a really nice marriage here of the Police Gazette and the newspapers here. So I think I'm going to have to find out more about Martha, and I'm also probably just going to go off and read the Police Gazette because it's absolutely wonderful, and I do encourage you to have a look at it. Even if they're not your ancestors, they are fascinating people that are included in there. So I just want to say thank you everyone for joining us today. Thank you, Ellie, in the comments. It's lovely to have you. Really look forward to talking with you again, and have a lovely weekend, everybody. Take care. Goodbye.